Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mr. V's Camping Chair Chat. My name is Mr. V and I'm currently sat in the same office as last time, but I am in a camping chair, which is why I'm so low down. Let's tilt this camera down a bit. Oh yes, what a glamorous scene this is. That's a weird vibe to it. Also, I guess I need to bring in, like, if I'm bringing in pictures, for those of you watching on video, I don't know where they will go. Who knows? We'll figure out as we go along. But anyway, I am here. It's kind of a shame, as I promised last weekend. I said the camping chair would be out and about somewhere, and I did go. So after the Monaco Grand Prix finished, I did head out, took the chair, took a laptop, microphone, audio converter, what's it called? Digital audio converter, all the equipment, everything I needed, tripod, camera. I went to these woods near where I'm staying, which are kind of picturesque. A couple of people walking their dogs, but like not too busy. It was nice. And obviously, when you think of Monaco, what do you think of? You think of the trees over the pitch tree, obviously. So it was on theme. It was definitely on theme. There's always a theme. So I was in the middle of the woods. I get everything set up. I go to hit record on the camera. No card in camera. What? Yeah, didn't take any memory cards with me. It's here. It's sat right here. And so I couldn't record. And so I got back and I was just like, I'll just record it here again. I'm not going to drive out again. I already wasted like an hour of my day. So yeah, that was kind of a shame, but it's kind of tough. Like I'm still living. So I'm kind of between permanent places. I'm obviously here living in a small room surrounded by boxes. I'm on like a camping table. You can't really see, it's like a folding table with one screen for my PC, trying to edit everything. It's kind of tough when you don't have a permanent setup. And so yeah, I just forgot the thing. Shit. Basically. Anyway, you guys don't care. We have just had the Monaco Grand Prix, the jewel of the Formula 1 crown, the sexiest, certainly the shortest racetrack of the calendar. As always, as of Monaco, it is one of the highlights of the billionaire social calendar. The grid, absolutely mental. Anyone in any kind of celebrity you could possibly imagine somehow shows up at the Monaco Grand Prix. It is cool. People for the longest time have always said get rid of Monaco. And if you look at Formula 1 from a pure racing standpoint and number of overtakes in a weekend, yes, Monaco is bad for that. But I love the Monaco Grand Prix because the vibe, Formula 1 is so much more than just overtakes during a Grand Prix. It's the entire culture of the sport. It's the spectacle of qualifying on a Saturday. It's the love of car make loud noise, car go vroom vroom, and also it's just it's just a glitzy, glamorous event, a star-studded grid walk, and also Martin Brundle is there. Martin Brundle is a much bigger star than many of the people on the grid, I would like to add, but certainly he is less glamorous, and I think Martin would agree to that. So yeah, I love the Monaco Grand Prix just for the vibe of it and what it represents for Formula 1. It's a stupid race. We can all agree it's a stupid place to try and hold a race. And in a way, that's why I kind of like it because, there's not many overtakes, but it's kind of guaranteed that not everyone will make it to the end of this race. Someone will hit the wall or another car. And so it has some intrigue in that sense. And the qualifying is intriguing. Is this microphone even working? I can see the audio readout. I think it's fine. It's just set kind of low, I guess. Wait. Ooh, I can turn myself up in the edit, I guess. That's fine. So yeah, I like the Monaco Grand Prix, but not for the Grand Prix. I like the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. The actual Grand Prix is kind of, I'm obviously still going to watch it because, someone is going to hit the wall and lose a wheel. But you can't expect to have interesting racing here. If you're going into it and your weekend is make or break on there being an overtake for the win, you're gonna have a bad weekend, basically. But yes, Monaco Grand Prix weekend. As always here on the Camping Chair Chat, we shall talk through the weekend kind of in order. I'm not going to talk through any news stories of the week. We've not really had any news stories of the week. We've only had 6-7 days since Imola, and so nothing too crazy has happened in Formula One. I say that and I'm like, has anything crazy happened in Formula One? I have to say I haven't been too plugged into the news. Like, I've been trying to get a bit of editing done, but also I've just been busy. I've just been really busy. So we're not going to cover news, mainly because I haven't been reading the news, so I don't know what it is to tell you. But I don't think anything major's happened. I would have heard about it if it had, I think. Anyway, we're going to talk through the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. Obviously, in Monaco, qualifying is key. Qualifying is important always in Formula One because if you want the best chance of winning a race, you should start on pole position. That has the best chance of winning the race. But it's more important in Monaco. I remember I pulled out some stats in a video a while ago that there are other tracks which have more poles to win conversions. I think it was in the most average track video. Like, in theory, more people have won from 2nd, 3rd, 4th place in Monaco in like the last, whatever it was, 10 or 20 years than in, I want to say, Spain, and there was maybe one other track. But that's normally caused by people getting lucky with like a red flag, that kind of thing. That is almost never based on actual racing on track. And you can't rely on getting a red flag or getting a lucky safety car. And so if you want to basically guarantee the win, or as close to guaranteed as possible, you've got to qualify well. And so qualifying in Monaco is maybe the most important qualifying of the entire year. And also it's one of the most interesting because qualifying on this track is crazy. It's like driving so close to all these walls. It's obviously very fast considering the tightness of this place. So qualifying in Monaco is great. Anyone who says the Monaco weekend is bad clearly doesn't watch qualifying, because qualifying is good in Monaco. You can't deny that. Like, it's a cool place for a hot lap. So qualifying. Like, my brain is gone. Qualifying here at Monaco. It kind of started out as you would expect. We obviously have Mr. Colapinto now in his second race with Alpine. Alpine, who for kind of the whole weekend have not been looking great. We also then have other cars you'd expect to be at the back. People like the two Saubers, that kind of thing. Qualifying started out as you would expect, but just near the end of Q1, we had our young Mr. Timothy Antonelli going through the Nouvelle chicane, coming out of the tunnel, clipped the wall. So the left-hander, you come out the tunnel, down the hill, and obviously it's then left, right, and technically another left. But clipped the wall, took the front left off his car, and basically double yellowed or like red flagged the end of Q1, which prevented a couple people from setting new fast laps. I believe Lance Stroll was on a hot lap at the time and had to abandon it, that kind of thing. And so a bit of jeopardy then to kick off Q1. It also means that Kimi Antonelli did qualify 15th in Q1, so he did go through to Q2, but then obviously his car only had 3 wheels and you can't fix it that quickly. So Kimi Antonelli guaranteed to start out of the top 10. Not particularly good for Mercedes, but surely George Russell can do something good in qualifying, surely. So it's not all lost for Mercedes at this point. We had Lance Stroll knocked out. We also had then, I want to say Franco Colapinto qualified slowest on the road. And then other people, Oliver Behrman knocked out, Bortoletto, Gasly as well, because Alpine just not having a good time. But kind of as you would expect, nothing crazy. Also, Oliver Behrman was already going to this qualifying with a 10-place grid penalty for overtaking under a red flag in practice. That's not a big story. Like, you know, people crash in practice in Monaco, and so they did. I believe Oscar Piastri crashed in practice, red flags come out. Ollie Behrman then just went past another car. It's not a big story. And he argued that his team didn't tell him, but like you can see his onboards and he drove past light panels that are red. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. So yeah, they're all out. Oliver Behrman was already going into this thing with a 10-place grid penalty. So why even push in quali? Why push and risk breaking the car if you not really expecting to get into the top 10? And obviously, if you qualify anywhere from 10th down, you're starting P20. So if you're Behrman, there's no point really qualifying. Like, maybe he could push really hard and get his hat onto like P9, P8, but he's still starting P19 in that case. So like, just don't bother. Don't take the risk, honestly. But yeah, kind of a shame for Stroll, because Aston Martin actually was looking okay this weekend. Fernando Alonso did get through into Q2 and then did actually also get through into Q3. So was finding some pace in that car, which is having some flashes now. They obviously had some promise in Imola as well, qualifying up in the top 10. Didn't go that well. Fernando Alonso still finishing outside the points, but Aston Martin have unlocked something. They had an upgrade package in Imola, and they're just knocking on the door now of maybe scoring Alonso some points. As I said, Alonso did get up into Q3, so one of the bigger storylines of qualifying, Fernando Alonso actually started this race P7. No, I lied to you. He qualified P7, but then with other penalties, he actually started P6, because also in Q1, Lewis Hamilton, 3-place grid penalty for impeding Max Verstappen going up into turn 3, like going up the hill of Massenet. Just the stupidest thing. So we actually heard his team radio in the broadcast, and Hamilton basically going up this hill. His engineer, Ricardo Adami, tells him Verstappen behind 4 seconds pushing, and then he comes on the radio and says he's slowed, as in say he's backed off his lap, and so you don't need to get out the way. And then Hamilton starts to go through turn 3, but Verstappen did not slow, and so Hamilton is on the racing line. Verstappen gets to the top of the hill, meets a red car, has to take a wide line through there, compromises his quali lap in Q1. Ultimately, it didn't matter. Verstappen did get through into Q2, but just horrible communication from the Ferrari pit wall, and specifically Ricardo Adami. And this is something I wanted to mention. I guess I was going to talk about it in the race, but there's kind of no point. But it then continued in the race as well, with Hamilton just having very icy, bad communication with his race engineer. And this is not new for the Monaco Grand Prix. They've been like this on the radio to each other for several races now. There seems to be some massive disconnect. It seems like Ricardo Adami and Hamilton just don't like each other at all. And Adami does not know what to say to Hamilton on the radio. Hamilton asks him direct questions, and it seems to it seems to shock Adami. It flummoxes him, and he doesn't know how to answer sometimes. There's just a huge disconnect. Obviously, Hamilton was used to having Bono on the radio. They worked together for, Christ alive, 11 seasons? So, he was very used to a specific style from Bono. So there's going to be some teething pains going to a new race engineer. That's always going to happen, because everyone's different. Everyone has a slightly different style. Everyone has a slightly different voice. You might start to mishear some things or be expecting certain phrases, whatever. So there's going to be some teething pains. But this is so much more than teething pains between Hamilton and his race engineer. This is unacceptable levels of miscommunication, non-communication, poor communication. Just awful. And it starts to beg the question, does Hamilton just request a new engineer? Yeah, Adami's been there for a while. He's a seasoned guy within Ferrari. He was Vettel's race engineer. I don't think he was there before Vettel, but don't quote me on that one. He's been there for a while, and so yes, the team should be loyal to him. But at the same time, driving in your car is Lewis Hamilton, who you're paying 50 million euros a year. Don't waste that money by giving him a guy that he has no chemistry with. If Lewis needs a new race engineer, give him a new race engineer. Insanity. And I can't imagine that Lewis hasn't brought this up to upper management. Charles Leclerc got a new race engineer last year because he asked for one. So it's possible within Ferrari. I can't see this partnership going for the entire year, because it's just not working. It's just fundamentally not working over at Ferrari. And Hamilton is still not up to speed with Leclerc, but he's not terrible in that Ferrari. But he's never going to unlock like 100% with this just complete lack of support through the radio. And yeah, you have to ask some questions like, do they need to make a change? I would say yes, they do. We shall see, but that's a key one. And like they got out of the car, and Hamilton was seen apologizing to Verstappen in the paddock, and then obviously after that talk, Verstappen was asked about it, and Verstappen was like, "Yeah, I don't blame Hamilton at all." Like he explained the situation. It sounds like he had no idea, but yeah, just stupid. And I guess I wanted to add on that as well. There were points in the race where Hamilton was on the radio, and he just sounded like sad. He just sounds so sad. Like this Monaco Grand Prix was a bit of a weird one. And with the tyre strategy, which obviously we'll talk about, one of the big talking points for this weekend. Hamilton qualified second of the two Ferrari. He was behind Leclerc, should I say. And so that means he's kind of in the role to play the team game here. And so this was never going to be a big, exciting race for Hamilton. So it's a bit of a downer weekend for him. Yeah. But he sounded sad far beyond that. He just sounded like he was just miserable. He's in just a bad relationship. He does not want to be in that car. So yeah, just Ferrari, give him a new engineer. So yeah, I'm going to move on. We then get into Q2. And obviously after the heartbreak from Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli ripping a wheel off his car in Q1, all eyes on George Russell to at least deliver something good for Mercedes. George has been so consistent in both qualifying and the race this year, but in qualifying this year, getting his Mercedes up into the top 5 basically regardless of conditions. Obviously, the belief was he would do that again here in Monaco. And if you qualify top 5 in Monaco, there's a big chance you finish top 5 in Monaco. So all eyes on George Russell. He goes out for Q2 and his engine gives up. On his outlap, engine just cakes it. Goes into the tunnel, never leaves the tunnel because his engine just stops. It's not looking like a good weekend for Mercedes. Yeah, it's just kind of luck, isn't it? These things happen, engines just fail, gearboxes explode. But yeah, for two Mercedes, basically, you call it a DNF in qualifying in Monaco, the most important qualifying of the year. God damn. Not happy time to be Toto Wolff. I don't cry for Toto. He's a billionaire. He's 6'4" and a billionaire, so he's doing fine in life, but tough weekend for them. Other than that, we have other drivers out in Q2. Obviously, Kimi Antonelli qualifies 15 with no time. George Russell qualifies P14. Nico Hülkenberg gets up to P13, which is pretty good for that Sauber. Maybe you thought he could get a couple places higher because he didn't out-qualify anyone in Q2. He was the slowest in Q2, but I guess you can't complain. Sauber P13. Yuki Tsunoda P12 is another kind of a shock one. Obviously, the media pressure, the rumors has been taken off Tsunoda somewhat, and it seems that when he gets these P12s, it doesn't kick up too much of a backlash in the media and with Helmut Marko and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, it's not a position you want to be in when your teammate is in contention for the Drivers' Championship. Tsunoda did get kind of caught out. So he got caught out by red flags for Russell's car, which happened with about 10 minutes on the clock, I want to say. But that gives plenty of time to even go out twice again after that. And then Tsunoda just couldn't put together a good lap after that. So he got a little bit caught out, but ultimately he just didn't get a good lap in Q2. You can make the argument again, that's that Red Bull being hard to drive. And if it's hard to drive and very snappy and feels very uncontrollable through a corner, well, you don't want to be out of control around any corner here in Monaco because you will hit a wall. And so he was probably playing it safe and that caused him to go slow. But P12 for Yuki, not ideal. And then we have P11 for Sainz, which once again, he will be unhappy with. Feels kind of crazy that we're now in a situation where we kind of expect both Williams to get up into Q3. How quickly things have changed. And we can talk about P11 being a disappointment in qualifying for Sainz. But yeah, it is basically. And so we go into Q3. A lot of runs in Q3. Obviously, it's standard fare in Formula 1 for everyone basically just to do 2 fast laps per session. You do a banker and then you do another fast lap at the end of each qualifying session. We saw a couple drivers doing more than 2 push laps in all qualifying sessions, but particularly in Q3 when there's not too much traffic. So it's nice. It's nice to see like lots of fast laps. More qualifying is always better. I'm not against that. But it means we've got people setting times like throughout the session as well. So I enjoyed that. I liked that a lot. We had towards the end of the session with about 3 minutes left, I want to say. Both McLarens did a hot lap. And we have Norris on pole with Piastri second. They're then followed up by both Ferraris, I want to say, with Verstappen P5. But then Ferraris go out and do some times. Hamilton goes through, splits the 2 McLarens, I believe. And then Charles Leclerc comes through and actually sticks it on pole. It looked for a hot minute with like 1 minute left to go in Q3. Charles Leclerc once again on pole position at home. Can he make it back-to-back wins here in Monaco? Pole position is the place to be if you want to do that. But with no time left at all on the clock, McLaren do another push lap. They did a double, so like push, cool down, push. They do another one. Oscar Piastri improves slightly, puts himself up just behind Norris, but then Norris improves, goes ahead of Leclerc by 1/100th, I believe, or like 15,000th, that kind of thing. Just takes pole position off Leclerc. Feels bad, man. It feels bad if you're from Monaco. So we end up in qualifying. Norris on pole position, ahead of Charles Leclerc on the front row. Oscar Piastri P3, then Hamilton does qualify P4, but receives a 3-place grid penalty, putting him P7 on the grid. And I want to say as well, I obviously talked about the Hamilton thing with his race engineer, but that is mental to like make a mistake that causes a 3-place grid drop in Monaco. That's like a cardinal sin of being a race engineer, is causing a penalty for your driver. Wild. Anyway, so Hamilton is at P7. Ahead of him, we then have Verstappen is promoted up into P4. Hadjar, who did amazingly well to qualify P6, gets bumped up to P5 in an RB, which means we have Red Bull family drivers next to each other in P4 and P5, but one in a Red Bull and one in a V car. What the hell? We then have behind him Alonso manages to get P6 on the grid, bumped up from his P7 as Hamilton goes behind him. Then Hamilton, then Ocon did very well to get his house up there, qualifies P8. Then Liam Lawson, both V-carbs, up in the top 10. Liam Lawson goes P9, which on any other day would feel amazing, but when your teammate is P5, you have to be a bit like, shit, I could have done better. But no, excellent day for V-carb, just in general, and we'll talk about it as well, but they have a very good race as well. I would say V-carb as a team are the biggest winners from this weekend. Well, McLaren, I guess, as well. But other than them, V-carb, excellent weekend. And then rounding out P10 is Alex Albon, so just ahead of his teammate Carlos Sainz in P10 and P11. But yeah, good qualifying. Excitement towards the end, drama, both Mercedes knocked out, kind of out of position. Will they claw their way back up through the pack? No, it's Monaco. They're going to be stuck. But yeah, good qualifying. And this is what I'm saying. I like the Monaco weekend because qualifying is always a banger here. You have to watch Monaco qualifying. And having said that, I didn't watch it because I was out at the time. So I watched the highlights and then I watched the full session. I would love to say on Sunday morning, but Sky Sports and Now TV, I don't know why, take like 24 hours to upload all previous sessions. I don't understand why that is. As far as I can tell, they don't really edit them. So what is taking you 24 hours to then get that thing ready? Even if they do have to edit them, I can turn around this podcast faster than they can turn around a TV program, which must be worked on by dozens of people. Why does it take you 24 hours to upload it? Why is the qualifying not available to view until like 20 minutes before the race? What are you doing, Now TV? Anyway, so I'd love to say I watched it Sunday morning, but I didn't. I watched it Sunday afternoon, annoyingly. But yeah, qualifying in Monaco is fantastic. Like you got to be watching that if you're a Formula 1 fan. If you're like the kind of Formula 1 fan who watches every weekend, I appreciate there's some people who watch some weekends. You know, you maybe watch like a quarter of the races, and that's fine. That is okay. If you watch every weekend, you got to be watching Monaco qualifying. It's so good. And so after qualifying, we then, and this may surprise you, have the race. Sunday morning starts off a bit rocky here in Monaco. We have the Formula 2 feature race, the Sunday morning race. That starts with a huge 15-car pileup down at turn 1. It starts out like a couple of the front runners basically getting attached, going through turn 1. One gets turned around sideways. They obviously then clip a couple other people who can get like spun out on the exit of turn 1, and then like the road is blocked and everyone gets stuck. Great. And then we have Porsche Super Cup, and they do the exact same thing on lap 1, turn 1, in Saint-Devote. Huge, massive pile-up, tons of cars. Has someone cursed turn 1, or potentially even Saint-Devote, as well as being the patron saint of the Principality of Monaco, and I want to say the island of Corsica, but I'm not entirely sure. As well as being the patron saint of Monaco, maybe Saint-Devote is also the patron saint of making sure the racing is interesting. 2 huge turn 1 part. Also, actually, wait, can we talk about that one in a second? So you may know that turn 1 at Monaco is called Saint-Devote, and the reason for that is there's a church right there. And it's the church of Saint-Devote, who is the patron saint of Monaco. It's like the church of Monaco. Like, Monaco's not big enough to have like multiple parishes. It maybe has one other, whatever. Can we talk about the name Saint-Devote, which in English is just like Saint Devotee? That's a bit on the nose. It's a bit on the nose for a saint, isn't it? Like, what are you going to call saints like Saint Holy? Saint loves Jesus? Like, I would expect all saints are devotees to the church. That kind of goes without saying. That's kind of part of the job description. Saint devotee. Like, be a bit more imaginative with the name. Surely she had a name. I believe it's a she. Surely she had like a real name. Her name was not devotee. Maybe it was, because you can get like very out there Catholic names. But like, what the hell? Anyway, so yeah, Saint-Devote was having a hell of a morning, turning into a car park in lots of the support races. We had a load of oil from some of the Porsches that like rolled down the hill from when they had crashed, and so that had been covered in chalk to soak it all up. But there's still obviously some fears of Formula 1 that the exit of turn 1 might be slippery with some oils. Obviously, a Formula 1 car getting on throttle coming out of a corner is not a given. Like, we're not used to seeing cars spinning up their rear wheels on corner exit. You see it a couple times a year, but it's easy to feel like Formula 1 cars have just like traction control and they come through a corner and then just floor it and it just goes where you point it. But you do have to be careful. Like, these cars have 1,000 horsepower, and so you have to be careful if you're getting on throttle coming out of corners. And so if that corner exit is covered in oil, that makes it even harder, and that increases the chance, particularly on lap 1 where your tires are cold, your car is heavy, you're fighting with cars to your side, that you might spin the car around 180 coming through this corner. So there was a bit of an inkling that we might get some turn 1 chaos, some lap 1 chaos for the Formula 1 race. That didn't actually turn out to be the case. We had Lando Norris, our pole sitter, with a huge lockup coming into turn 1, just basically trying to stay ahead of Charles Leclerc. I guess everyone nowadays is so scared of the ahead of the apex rule that you have to like outbrake yourself, because if Charles Leclerc had just braked slightly later than Norris, because Charles Leclerc had a good run off the line, if he had braked ever so slightly later, got alongside, and then, as you would expect, Lando had like pushed him right out to the wall. If Leclerc had clipped the wall, that would have been like a huge penalty for Lando now, with the alongside of the apex rule. Just normal Monaco turn 1 stuff now, by the letter of these rules, has turned into like full illegal behavior. I've talked about the rules before, I'm not going to do it again. That didn't happen, but clearly Lando Norris was trying to stay ahead of Leclerc as much as possible. Massively locks up, looks like he was going to go slamming into the wall on the outside of turn 1, somehow gets it turned in, and so continues the race off in P1. Basically all of our leaders, at least like the top 10, all go through turn 1 in the same order. We're getting a bit of deja vu from 2024, where obviously we had a red flag on lap 1, and then the entire grid just carried on in the same order after that. So every car goes through turn 1 in the same order they started. And this is the point where we have to talk about the two-stopper rule. So obviously big news of the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. A new rule, new regulation was introduced for this weekend where you have to make 2 stops. And within those 2 stops, at least 2 different tire compounds. So it's still that you don't have to use all 3 tires. You don't have to use soft, medium, and hard. You can still just do like hard and medium, like a normal race, but you have to stop twice. And I believe the way the rule was worded, you in theory could run like a set of hards and then pit onto a set of mediums and then put the same set of hards back on. I think that was legal because otherwise I think Pirelli would have to supply another set of tires because teams would be like, oh, we don't have enough tires. Like we physically can't get through the race now. So I think you could stop onto the same ones, but obviously teams don't want to do that. And so they just saved more tires through practice than maybe they normally would. So yeah, obviously big talk of this 2-stop rule and lots of speculation that if you're at the back of the grid, it may be beneficial to just pit on lap 1 because if the rest of the bunch of cars is running a Monaco Grand Prix like they normally do, and for those of you uninitiated, what normally happens in the Monaco Grand Prix in recent years is the leader holds everyone up because track position is so important in Monaco. You don't want to give anyone behind you a place that they can pit into, basically, because if you do, and if they pit before you and then there's a safety car, then they undercut you and you are like guaranteed to be not winning this race. And so the strategy for years now in Monaco has been that the leader goes crazy slow, like many seconds a lap slower than they could, and bunches everyone up. But obviously the thinking was, now with a 2-stop rule, particularly if you're in P20 at the end of lap 1, you can just stop, and obviously you'll be 25, 30 seconds behind. But if the entire pack is going slower than they could, well, you can catch back up to them in just like 5 or 10 laps. And then basically, you're with the pack, but you only have to do 1 stop, and everyone else still has to do 2. So there was lots of speculation. Would people pit on the first lap? It turns out they did, but some of that was due to some incidents. So had a couple people colliding. I want to say Oliver Behrman clipped someone with his front wing. So he comes into the pits at the end of the first lap and gets a new front wing as well as tyres. We also had Gabriel Bortoleto. So he was up next to the Mercedes and actually overtakes Kimi Antonelli around the outside of the hairpin. Very nice move from Gabby. Very cool, because obviously the pack is going slow. Everyone's like nose to tail. And so you're going through the hairpin even slower than you normally would. You don't exactly go through there fast at the best of times. But Gabriel Bortoleto saw this, saw that Kimi Antonelli was right to the inside, right to the apex of the hairpin, as is the normal line, but slower than normal. And so just hung it around the outside and got around him around the hairpin. Very, very cool move. Very lovely, Mr. Bortoleto. Keeps the place through Lower Mirabeau. But then Antonelli, seeing an opportunity, Gabriel Bortoleto went kind of wide through Portier. So Antonelli just like stuck it up the inside, stuck his nose in there, got there by the apex, caught Bortoleto out, I want to say. So Bortoleto, I think, kind of went to turn in, but then like gave up on turning in. Just hits the wall. In the Perez parking spot, as I like to call it, on the outside of Portier. Just goes into the soft barriers at that point. Brings out double waved yellows, or maybe even a VSC. It was a VSC even. So yeah, not great for him. He actually gets it in reverse and gets back round to the pits, changes his front wing, and he carries on. He has an okay race from that point. But because of that, we do get a few people stopping. So Sonoda, I think, is the highest runner to stop. Then we have Gasly, Behrman, and Bortoleto all pit on lap 1. And at this point in time, we don't really know how this race is going to pan out. And so it is looking like this could go very well for particularly Yuki Tsunoda. If it was going to be the case where Norris was backing up the entire pack, well, then Tsunoda would be able to get onto the back of them, and he's one pit stop ticked off. he's got a very strong chance of getting like way up into this race. It turned out though, the two-stop rule did change how the front runners go about racing in Monaco, because Norris and Leclerc with him, and then Piastri, but he was a few seconds further behind, were not hanging around. I guess because people are going to be making so many different stops at so many different times, you can't hold the pack up and prevent them from pitting, because they have to pit, they'll just do it anyway. And because you start getting people like pitting already on lap 1, at that point there's no point holding the pack up, and so now the strategy is flipped, and actually it's worthwhile the leaders just going for it in Monaco, something we haven't really seen them do, or much, for years. And so that was quite nice. And we didn't get any overtakes for the lead, like they all stayed in the same order, but they were driving still not full pace, because they're managing tyres, making sure they can get good stints out their tyres, but quicker than they normally would in Monaco, and we like to see it. People are actually kind of pushing in Monaco. We like to see it. And so, because they start pushing, we then get like some odd, different bits of separation throughout the field, which, you know, makes it interesting in a way. And we start to develop quite quickly some team strategies. The first team that was obviously doing this was RB. So we had Hadjar up there in the top 10, and obviously Liam Lawson at the back of the top 10 in like P8, basically. And they pulled the pin on a team game early. Liam Lawson effectively just starts bunching up everyone behind him, which is very easy to do in Monaco. You know, you just go through the hairpin slower than normal. You go through the Nouvelle chicane slower than normal. You just like, you know, basically everywhere other than the pit straight, you just go like a bit slower than normal, kind of like you're doing a cool down lap. People can't get past you, particularly if you just drive in the middle of the road. If you're just in the middle of the road, like on the braking zone down into Nouvelle chicane, through to back, going up the hill, through Casino, people can't get past you. It doesn't matter how slow you're going. And so Liam Lawson starts massively holding up the pack, literally like 3 or 4 seconds a lap, giving Hadjar a huge pit window. And so we get the situation where Isaac Hadjar pits twice in front of Lawson, pits once, is ahead of Lawson, drives at normal pace again, where Lawson continues to hold the pack up, gets ahead, and pits again. And we start to get the situation, because Hadjar pit before all the drivers ahead of him, and you start to think, like, if Hadjar pits onto fresher tyres and he can catch up to the back of, like, P6 again, I was thinking for a minute, is Hadjar going to win this race? It turns out no. It turns out he wasn't able to actually, like, fully catch up to the front runners again, because they were pushing. And I guess that's, they had to, I guess, like, they pretty game theoried it out before this weekend, and they realized they had to push. Because if they were going just a little bit slower, I genuinely think Hadjar could have won this race by just having a teammate, Lawson, close enough to him to be able to, like, bunch up the pack and give him that pit window. So, yeah, I genuinely got kind of, not scared, but almost, like, excited. Like, I would have been all for a Hadjar win here in Monaco. That would have been a storyline and a half. I don't know if that would have been the success they were looking for from the two-stop strategy, if, like, the, what, 8th or 9th best team on the grid won the race. That may not have been the results they wanted, but it would have been a memorable story. So yeah, we start to get this kind of skullduggery, tomfoolery from VCARB, but there's nothing much you can do about it, basically. And so it's intriguing because it's different for Formula 1 race, but is it good racing? And so I guess let's talk about the two-stop rule and how it panned out, because after VCARB did this, we then had Williams do the same thing. And so they pull that out, and it works well in their advantage. We get both VCARBs and both Williams score points here. Yes, they do. So it worked out well for those teams that were able to do it, and it means we did get like a lot of stuff happening in the race, so lots of like situations to follow with drivers being held up. We got a situation when Albon was trying to hold up the pack, and he had the 2 Mercedes stuck behind him. He had George Russell directly behind him. He's obviously getting frustrated, so Russell at that one point just cut through the Nouvelle chicane, elected not to give it back. And, you know, in a way, that makes sense from Russell. If he stays behind Albon, he's guaranteed to finish outside the points. if he cuts the chicane, there's a chance the stewards only give him like a 5 or 10-second penalty, but he can make that up. Turns out they saw what he was doing, and so just gave him a drive-through penalty, so he absolutely couldn't get a benefit from that. But this is to say, we had some stuff. There was stuff happening in the race, but a very different vibe to like a Formula 1 race. Very heavy on like strategy and watching like both cars in a team. It almost gave me the vibe of Formula E peloton races, where there's lots of stuff going on and there's lots of things to keep track of, but it's not necessarily racing. Do you know what I mean? Like, cars are going around and doing stuff that you have to pay attention to, but it's not racing. It's like chess on wheels at this point. And Formula 1 is always that to an extent, but it just had a very different vibe this race. I will say, like, during the broadcast, and I watch on Now TVs, but it's Sky UK, so David Croft, Martin Brundle, et al. And they, in the broadcast, were talking about how the two-stop rule was unsuccessful. I don't fully agree with that. I wouldn't say it was a resounding success, but it made a race with stuff happening. And may I remind you, we get many Monaco Grand Prix, such as last year, where absolutely nothing happens. And it was it's kind of weird the way they talked about it. We had a quote from Martin Brundle when the three podium place finishers were getting out the cars. And he was talking about how he thought the two-stop rule was unsuccessful. And he said, the focus of this race was on pitting, not on racing. Martin, have you watched any of the previous Monaco Grand Prix? That's what it's always like. It's always about the pit timing and people trying to undercut each other. It's never about racing. What racing and what Monaco Grand Prix have you been watching? Martin Brundle just watching like the Monacos from the 1970s on repeat, clearly. He's remembering back in the day when he was racing. There's no racing in Monaco in the 21st century. What do you mean? It's always like this. And so it was kind of weird. They were saying like, oh yeah, like the whole Monaco Grand Prix was all about pit strategy and it's not what we want. It's like, but that's what we have anyway. And this was more interesting than lots of them in the last few seasons. So I kind of think it was a success. It really confused me the way they were talking about it. I don't know what they're expecting. I guess we had the two-stop rule, and lots of people in Formula 1 media were expecting it to cause on-track action. They're expecting it to cause people on wildly different pit strategies. You know, some people trying to go long, some people doing like shorter stints on soft tires, and therefore like big tire offsets, overtakes down into turn 1 and out of the tunnel. I think they're expecting it to cause overtakes, and it didn't do that, and then some people wrote it off as a failure. But this was definitely more intriguing than a normal Monaco Grand Prix of the last 5 to 10 years. I think it was fine. I think we could do that again. I think, why not? It was strange, but not like bad, just strange. It's just a new thing to get used to. As I said, like a Formula E peloton race. I understand some of you probably never watched that and don't know what I mean by that. And fair enough. I wouldn't recommend anyone watches Formula E. But I'd watch them from time to time because I'm interested in motorsport. So basically, with Formula E, I guess not so much this year. I think it's kind of gone this year. But for a few years, with the design of the cars and the amount of energy they had for the race, it became the strategy in the race where driving fast and getting out in the lead would basically guarantee that you wouldn't have a good finish in the race. And so the strategy is to hang around and conserve energy as much as possible and try and be mid-pack, and then you drive fast for like the last 8 laps or something like that. But that means the entire grid wants to be together. No one wants to be first, because when you're in first, you use more energy to break through the air, but you don't want to be in last, because then when there is the breakaway, you're too far back to capitalize on it. It's kind of like oval racing, which is not terrible. Like, there's a lot of strategy in over racing, but it's not racing. It's bizarre. But, you know, Formula E Peloton races were strange, but they're not universally hated. Some people actually quite like them for the strategy of them, because at least there is like a strong strategy element there. And I would say that was the same in this Monaco Grand Prix. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. If they said we're doing this again next year, I'm not against that. But it was odd. And Martin Brundle, at least on the Sky broadcast, was talking about some potential changes, maybe mandating so your first stop has to be in the first half of the race and your second stop has to be in the second half of the race. I can understand the merit of that, but then you're taking away the option. Like, what if someone wants to go long off the line, have everyone else pit behind them, take the lead of the race, and then just like goal hang for a safety car? That is a strategy. If you mandate that your first stop has to be before lap, 39? How many laps do you do here? 78? Yeah, whatever. It has to be in the first 30 laps, let's say. Then you write off a load of valid strategies. And so I guess the idea is that you want to mix up strategies, but my concern is if you start to do stuff like mandate that your stops have to be at certain times, well, then you are guaranteeing that every car is on the same strategy. And so I don't mind it. I'd say you can kind of leave it as is. As I said, was the racing great? No. Is the racing great at a Monaco Grand Prix where you only have to do one stop? Also no. But this one had more other things to watch, so yeah, I don't mind. I've talked it in circles for a while now, but I wanted to get my feelings across, and my feeling was, yeah, it's fine. Basically. Some other stuff in the race. So Pierre Gasly drove over the back of Yuki Tsunoda's car. I think basically what happened, so this was on lap 9, Gasly behind Tsunoda. They're running in like P12 and P13, that kind of thing, after they both stopped actually, at the start of the race. Not 12 and 13, further back than that, like 17, 18. Anyway, they come out of the tunnel relatively close. Gasly looking like he's like pressuring Tsunoda. Gasly gets on the brakes and it looks like he steps out the back of his car, or it looks like just the car's too stiff on the lumps here in Monaco. So basically, like, if the car goes sideways a bit, he loses braking ability and just goes into the back of Tsunoda. It's not really on Gasly. Like, it's so easy to do that when you're following close to someone, particularly in Monaco. Like, let's not forget, street tracks, all street tracks, but particularly Monaco, is lumpy as anything compared to a regular track. If you go to a normal racetrack, if you're not used to driving on them, you will be amazed by just how the tarmac feels. Particularly if you live in like a country like the UK, or I guess most of Europe has like terrible potholes and terrible road quality. When you go to a track and it's so smooth, oh my god, man, it's like being on an ice rink. But like not slidey. It's so nice. It's so smooth. And so obviously Formula 1 cars mostly run on tracks with smooth tarmac, and so they're very stiff. Monaco is just a town with roads that get driven on by lorries and shit for the rest of the year. And so it's lumpy. It has obviously they get rid of any potholes and stuff, and it has pretty good tarmac relative to like some random back street in Birmingham. But it is still public roads, and it is still much lumpier than a normal racetrack. And so sometimes you go for a lump and it kicks one of your wheels off, and then you lose braking ability because you don't have rubber on the tarmac. And these things happen. So Gasly hits the back of Tsunoda. Yeah, it's human error, but then it's very understandable. He goes over the back of him, rips one of his front wheels off, and then I guess cuts out his brake system, like cuts his brake wires, and so has no brakes. And so this happened down into the Nouvelle Chicane. Pierre Gasly then, with 3 wheels, managed to like slowly drag his car the whole way back around to the pits. And the commentary, at least the Sky commentary, were talking about how he's not meant to do that and how that's dangerous. But then Gasly came out and said, like, I had no brakes. And I kind of agree with Gasly. Like, what do you want him to do? Like, there's a marshal post to the side of the Nouvelle Chicane. If he can't brake, though, I don't want to drive into a marshal post at 60 miles an hour. I'm going to slam into a wall or a guy or a truck. All of those are bad options. And so if Gasly can't slow down his car, his options are go into a marshal post way too fast and hit something or someone, That's bad. He can wheel it around to the pits and drag loads of debris everywhere. That's bad. Or he can, like, I don't know, grind against the wall to try and slow his car down, like intentionally crash into the wall at to back. That's also terrible. And that's going to cost way more money. So his best option is to, like, wheel around to the pit slowly. So I don't know. I haven't checked the documents if he got some kind of penalty for that. I would say it's a pretty understandable situation. I think it's fine. But if Gasly ends up getting some penalty points and like a grid drop for the Spanish Grand Prix, that will be why. But yeah, he does that. It doesn't seem to affect Tsunoda's car too much. Tsunoda carries on, but he's like stuck in the pack at this point. The next kind of major thing, we also talked about the Hadjar and Lawson tomfoolery. I also want to say as well, lots of people playing team games here. The Williams both like held up the pack for each other, but ultimately they both finished together in the points. Liam Lawson very much did a solid for Isaac Hadjar. Isaac Hadjar didn't do anything in return for Lawson. Lawson still finished in a good position. He still finished P8. But, you know, you can't be angry with that. And Hadjar was ahead of him in P6 with Ocon in between them. You can't be unhappy with that. But like Lawson did a lot more favors for Hadjar than Hadjar did for Lawson. If I was Lawson, I'd be expecting like a fat bonus for doing that. Just like playing the team game, no questions asked. Very cool of Lawson. Not easy. Like, you know, you can back people up and people can't really pass you, but still not easy because you have to make sure that people don't slam into the back of you. You have to constantly be watching in your mirrors that people don't, you know, try and drive through the Nouvelle chicane and like weird stuff like this, or try and make a random move where you're not expecting it to try and catch you out. So it's not like simple to do. So yeah, Lawson did a massive favor for Hadjar there. So if I was him, I'd be expecting, you know, a fruit basket and maybe a bonus check come Christmas. Let's see. But yeah, the next kind of major thing to happen, Fernando Alonso, who started this race P6 and was on for a P7, lost drive. He's called it himself. He's called himself the unluckiest man in Formula 1 this year. Gee, he's not wrong. He was easily on for a P7 in this race. Maybe, you know, maybe it would have been tough with the V-carbs and maybe it would have been like a P8, but he definitely would have scored points if his car just made it to the end. Christ, man. His engine just completely gives up, smoking out the back, has to pull it into the like escape road at the Rascasse. I would be honestly, if I was Fernando Alonso, I would be like conscious that someone has cast a curse on me. Someone has been out to the fucking hags in the woods. He's created like voodoo dolls of my car. Like, this is beyond coincidence. This is so awful for Alonso. So yeah, you have to feel bad for him. Obviously, I like Fernando Alonso. It doesn't feel good for him now to be pointless after 8 races. And lots of that is through no fault of his. Like, the car hasn't been there for the first few races, but it's getting back there, and he's now qualifying it up in Q3 several times, and it just explodes on him. It just sucks. So yeah, that's not good. That kind of happened. Then after that, we had all shenanigans, like the Williams holding people up, but that was interesting, but nothing actually consequential happened. There were no, like, certainly nothing at the front of this race, no overtakes for the lead. We had all the front runners except for Verstappen pitting, and then Verstappen was just holding P1, hoping to get a red flag. I'm not entirely sure what the deal was with red flags here, because obviously the way this regulation was written, so for a normal race, the kind of pit stop regulation says you have to use 2 tyre compounds throughout the race, which is the reason if there's a red flag, you can actually do no in-race pit stops, because you drive around on hard tyres, red flag, and then you put on medium tyres, you drive around on those, finish the race, you have used 2 tyres, done. The way the regulation was written, this special one for Monaco, it said you have to make 2 pit stops. It didn't say you have to use 3 tyre sets. It said you had to make 2 pit stops. And so I'm not entirely sure if there's a red flag, if you still have to make 2 in-race pit stops. I feel like there must be some circumstances there, because imagine if the race got red flagged every 5 laps. When do you make your pit stops? Like, when would you get round to it if there's too many stoppages and too many safety cars? Or imagine if, like, you've made 1, but then someone crashes into pit entry. the pit lane is closed and there's a safety car for like 15 laps, when do you pit? How do you get that done? So there must have been some mitigating circumstances. And they talked about in the race how if you intentionally don't pit, you get disqualified. But if you don't pit for other circumstances, you might get like a 30-second penalty. I don't know. These things need to be made a lot more clear for idiot fans like me for next time. But we had people like Verstappen at the front hanging around for a safety car or a red flag. I think it still would have been beneficial for him, even if he then had to do like another pit somehow. That didn't happen, so he had to pit right at the end, and so Norris does win. Leclerc gets P2, Piastri P3, and that actually means that the top 10 basically finishes in the exact same order they were going to. So Norris from pole to P1, Leclerc grid P2, finishes P2, Piastri P3 to P3, Verstappen P4 to P4. Hamilton does move up, so he started P7, gets up to P5. You would argue he probably should have finished P4 if he didn't get the penalty, but que sera, sera. But then other than that, obviously Alonso retired, but everyone just stayed in the same order. So we then had Hadjar, Ocon, Lawson, Albon, Sainz all finish in the same order they started. And so yeah, stuff happened in the race, but in another sense, it was exactly the same to last year because everyone just stayed in the same order. So it's like the meme, you know, if I can bring it on screen for the video users, the two guys with a rake going down the stairs. One guy, like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, we ended up in the exact same place as 2024, apart from one of our top 10 runners had the engine explode. But the full top 10 finished in the same order, apart from Hamilton. But in between that, we had quite a lot of chaos to get the exact same result. And that's still the better way to do it. If we're going to get the same result, we may as well have the chaos with it. Like, I may as well take the free chaos. I like chaos. I'm on a chaos diet consisting of all chaos. So I'll take the chaos, thank you. But it was quite funny that everyone just finished in the same order regardless of Williams holding the pack up, swapping places, regardless of Hadjar and Lawson doing all the stuff to benefit Hadjar's race pace. Made no difference. Still the same order. It looked like for the last maybe 15 laps or so, we might have an overtake for the lead because Verstappen was in P1 with then Norris, Leclerc, Piastri behind him. We had a situation where Verstappen was clearly holding Norris up, like clearly slowing him down. And this makes perfect sense if you're Max Verstappen, like thinking of the championship. If you can slow Norris down enough so that Leclerc overtakes him and you minimize Norris's points, and so basically you make Norris get a P2 rather than a P1, if Verstappen's going to get P4 regardless, you may as well. And so I quite enjoy that. I quite enjoy that kind of thing from Verstappen. Like, Verstappen is one of those drivers and he knows the rules and he's so aware of everything that's happening all the time. And it's just like smart race strategy from him. It's smart racecraft. I like to see that kind of stuff. It didn't actually work. Leclerc didn't get past Norris, but my God, he tried. My God, he was close. There were points in, like the last 10 laps. Leclerc was almost literally pushing Norris through. We almost had a repeat of Gasly and Tsunoda. There were so many times Leclerc was so close to the back of Norris, like coming into the Nouvelle chicane, that kind of thing. If he had run into the back of him, now that would have been a story. That would have been some intrigue in the race. Didn't quite happen. He just ended up like NASCAR bump drafting Norris for 15 laps. But it's kind of cool to see cars that close together, and would you call it fighting if no one ever like actually gets ahead of anyone? Not quite fighting, but jostling around the streets here in Monaco. And so yeah, that kind of sums up the on-track action for the Monaco Grand Prix. One other thing I wanted to mention this before, but I'm going to keep calling it out if it keeps happening. The timing tower broke again. I don't know what they did to the timing tower over the off-season. Obviously, they made some updates, like some new graphics and stuff, but fundamentally, it's the same code. It's the same data system, I assume. They must have made some update to the in-car telemetry systems or in the data center, the Formula 1 like data and broadcast center. They've clearly changed something, and it's still broken. We also have all these issues from the first few races of the year where we just had no timing tower for like 5 or 10 laps. It happened again. it wasn't 5 laps, it was only half a lap, but we went to a replay, came back from replay, timing tower gone. Timing tower gone, I think it was on lap 42. And then we had some other issues, but you may have noticed as the race was ending and people coming across the line, obviously you get cars that are a lap down, they finish the race before cars are ahead of them, because when the leader finishes, you just finish on the lap you're on. And so on the timing tower, you get the little checkered flag next to your name as you finish. And so it's common for, like, obviously, P1 will get it before P2 and the flags are coming up in order. But then let's say P1 has lapped P12 and down. So P12 will get their flag relatively early and then it starts to sit down. But the time tower is broken in such a way that it was bumping these drivers up. And so at one point, like, Norris and Leclerc finished, but then, like, Antonelli finished and it put him way up into, like, P4. Because it didn't register that he was a lap down, I suppose. Like, the system is just fucked. Fix your system. Fix your timing system, Formula 1. This is fully unacceptable. There are 2 things you have to do for the broadcast. You have to point cameras at the cars and show us the times and which cars in which position. Everything else is a luxury. You know, hearing team radio is a luxury. Even having a commentator is a luxury, but that one's pretty simple to figure out. Having AWS graphics, that is actually my personal hell. I hate those so much. I on Blue Sky, posted about it in the race. We had a couple times in this one, they brought back the AWS gap after pit stop predictor graphic. So it's saying, like, oh, you know, Piastri has pit for like an undercut. If Verstappen pits now, he'll still be 1.5 seconds ahead of Piastri on pit exit. It's like, don't tell me that. You're taking away all of the intrigue of the pit stop. Don't tell me. Because it's half the fun looking at the timing tower and being like, oh, they're 28 seconds apart. And like a regular pit stop here is 27. But obviously if he has a slow stop, then maybe Piastri gets ahead of him. If you just tell me that he's going to come out ahead, well, then you've taken away all the fun. Stop AWSing all the fun out of Formula 1. Just AWS is just overall bad. Stop it. I don't like it. But yeah, talking about on-screen, all you have to do, point cameras at the cars and then show me the order that the cars are in. And we're not even getting both of those 2 things out of the broadcast this year. Don't know what they've done. Just undo it. Hit Control-Z. Go back to the 2024 timing tower. That worked great, as far as I remember. But I don't know what you've done. I don't like it, Formula 1. But yeah, that kind of rounds up the Monaco Grand Prix. And I realize I haven't even written down the championship standings for Championship Watch. But I'll do it live. I'll just look it up and I'll tell you. But yes, we have some movement, or at least some closing up in the Drivers' Championship. Coming into this race, Oscar Piastri was leading the Drivers' Championship by 13 points ahead of teammate Lando Norris. But as Lando Norris wins the race and Oscar Piastri only achieves a P3, that's obviously a 10-point swing in Norris's favour. And so now, the gap at the top of the driver standings is just 3 points. Oh, I had to burp. Oscar Piastri is still our leading drivers, not champion, but he's leading the championship on 161 points. But now Lando Norris is only 3 points behind on 158. Max Verstappen with a P4 has dropped away from the 2 of them. He is now on 136, so 25 points behind Piastri. But as I said last weekend, 25 points or less I consider to be in the championship battle. So Verstappen is still in that margin. He can take it. And actually, they've typically gone quite well in Spain, have Red Bull, I want to say. So I get the feeling that he could claw some points back next weekend. George Russell is still in P4, but he scored 0 points this weekend. And so he is like massively dropping off. He's now 62 points behind Piastri. George Russell is not in contention. Charles Leclerc obviously moves up, but he's still in P5. And then we have Lewis Hamilton down P6, and etc., etc. In the team standings, though, some movements. So McLaren still in P1, and actually they have over double the points of P2 now. Mercedes is still P2. Red Bull Racing, though, is in P3, only 4 points behind Mercedes. And Ferrari is in P4, only 1 point behind Red Bull, which means that P2 through 4 are separated by just 5 points in the constructor standings, which is juicy. We love to see that. There's then a big gap down. Williams is still P5. Haas is still P6. But Racing Bulls scored very good points this weekend with a 6th and an 8th. Is 12 points. That is mega for a team that only had 10 before this weekend. And so they've jumped up into P7 now. I think they were P8 before this. Really good for them. Really nice for them. Behind them, we still have Aston Martin, then Alpine, then Kick. None of those teams score any points this weekend, so nothing changes for them. But yes, the championship, it stays spicy. It's going to be a McLaren teammate battle for the Drivers' Championship this year, unless things change. And you know, Ferrari is coming along again. Ferrari is getting there. They're still not as quick as McLaren, but they're getting there, so they're keeping it interesting. You never know. But it stays spicy. It stays spicy, and we love it. I'm going to call that there, sitting in my little box room. It's now 11:15 at night. I'm going to start editing this, get it out for you whenever I can. We have the Spanish Grand Prix in just 7 days' time. And when you're listening to this, 6 or less days' time. It's a triple header, so we shall be back next weekend to discuss all things Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Until that time, though, enjoy your week. I've been Mr. V, and I'm Mr. C. You later.